Pelosi says she backs smaller stimulus because Biden won. Rejecting Heyer's offer was not a mistake. So she's saying, Dylan, let me just run this past you. She says that when Trump was offering, I think, $2.2 trillion, she said no. And here it is. She says it was not a mistake. Do you think that was a mistake, Dylan?
There's no question it was a mistake.
Okay.
I mean, it's just the most obviously abusive and stupid thing they can do is always the one that they do.
And I still get people telling.
These are simple questions. Simple questions. First, the headline to all direct relief in the pandemic in every country on earth is direct cash relief in some form or another for people. We're almost a year into the pandemic. God knows how many trillions of dollars after a so-called election. And not only is it not the lead headline in the legislation, both parties' leadership have agreed to leave it out.
Yes, that's why I say at this show that
that's the stuff of revolution.
We live in a failed state, and here they are. We're going we're in winter, and they still won't give cash payments to the citizens. What could possibly be going through their brains, Dylan? I mean, I get that they don't give a fuck, exactly as George Carlin said, but just to stop a revolution, wouldn't they just give you another $1,200? Why wouldn't they do that?
I honestly don't know. I can't. Are you there?
I'm here.
I'm befuddled and confused.
All right, let's get into this a little bit more then. Despite a refusal for roughly the past 6 months to advance a smaller aid package that Nancy Pelosi deemed half a loaf, Nancy Pelosi is now willing to support a bipartisan stimulus bill worth less than half her previous demand, thanks in part to Joe Biden's victory. Pelosi said she had no qualms about rejecting the Trump administration's offer before the election that was more than double the $900 billion proposal. Here's Nancy Pelosi at the press conference today. Here we are.
Not to accept half of a loaf months ago when you said, I'm not going to accept half a loaf.
Look, I'm going to tell you something. Don't characterize what we did before as a mistake, as a preface to your question, if you want an answer. That was not a mistake. It was a decision, and it has taken us to a place where we can do the right thing without other, shall we say, considerations in the legislation that we don't want.
So she said you cannot say, Dylan, to that reporter, she said, do not frame your question that it was a mistake to turn down twice as much stimulus before, or you're not going to get an answer to your question. So that's Nancy Pelosi saying, again, just ballsy, standing there with a straight face behind her mask that matches her $1,000 sweater. She's saying that it wasn't a mistake to not give people aid and to turn down the bigger. There it is. And we all know why she did it. It was political. Here it is.
The president does not want to legislate and just wants to have his name on a check. That ain't going to happen.
That's why she did it. It was for political reasons to hurt Donald Trump. And here she is at a press conference telling someone, if you phrase a question that I made a mistake in turning down twice as much relief and now we're getting half of it, that I'm not going to answer your question. How the fuck does that get? How is this allowed, Dylan? I know I ask you because you had a show at MSNBC. You were an award-winning reporter at Bloomberg. You know these people. How could this be happening?
They just have to be totally disconnected from reality. It is befuddling, Jimmy. I mean, really, I say this in all sincerity. However bad or nefarious or ill-intentioned Nancy Pelosi may be, and she's obviously very bad, it just seems to be, even in the most cynical political environment, why you would not put direct cash payments in a pandemic relief bill is inexplicable.
I
don't mean to leave you with dead air.
Yeah.
I'll offer you a weak explanation. I just don't. It is without explanation.
And it is without X. I mean, and here, someone says, I haven't even received my first $1,200 check. Here's another tweet. Not absurd. So this, I mean, can it be any clearer? We live in a plutocracy. And here's one more from Bad John Brown. He says, Pelosi is always willing to screw over the people if she gets what she thinks is an election or a fundraising issue. This is what she did here. Instead of getting people help during a deadly pandemic, Pelosi instead wanted the election issue. She got it. The people got nothing. And here is Bill. Now, Bernie Sanders, I gave him a hell of a hard time because he voted for the CARES Act and then lied to everybody that he got us the unemployment insurance because he gave a grandstanding speech. That was a lie. Bernie Sanders lied to you. He didn't get that. That was written by Michael Bennett. That was already agreed to. And Bernie gave a speech so he could bullshit you. And then he went along with the machine. Now he's vowing to vote against this one. Why do you think he would vow to vote against this one, Dylan, but not the first CARES Act that was the largest upward transfer of wealth in history?
I think that he knows that he failed. This is me guessing. I think that he knows that he blew it and was called out in the spring and is going to take a shot at redemption.
The only person that called him out
That's
was
my
me.
hope.
You and me and Matt Stoller. I think we're the only people who called Bernie out for that. So hopefully that he heard us.
But I think your call out, especially, you have a big audience and you've spent the most time in public of telling everybody what's going on. My hope is that was absorbed by someone around him and that they realize that they can't be letting legislation pass without direct cash relief.
Got you.
That's a dereliction of duty.
It
has been from the beginning.
To say the least. People still ask me, what did you want Bernie Sanders to do? I wanted Bernie Sanders to, at the minimum, vote against it and tell people what was wrong with it and to get people ready for what was coming and to tell people that it was the Democratic leadership who was in cahoots and letting them down. He didn't do any of that. Plus, he could have put a hold on that bill. That's why they give them the power to put holds on bill. He could have put a hold on that bill for like 2 weeks. Rand Paul does it every other fucking minute. He puts holds on bills and makes everybody jump around. Bernie didn't do that. If you're not going to exercise the power when it comes to the largest upward transfer of wealth in history, when are you going to exercise that power? The answer is Bernie will never exercise that power because he is a cuck, in the words of Kyle Kulinski, and he is a cuck at the worst form. And he's spineless, gutless, nutless wonder. That's what Bernie Sanders turned out to be, and he's a sheep herder for the corporation, and he fucking threw you under the bus. That's who Bernie Sanders is. He's a coward. He doesn't even have the fucking balls to come on this show because he knows I'm going to ask him a hard question, and he can't fucking take it. All right. Listen, Dylan, I really appreciate you coming on.
Well, hopefully he's stepping up this time at some redemption. I think I'm hopeful for that. We'll see what he does.
I'm hopeful for that, too. Now, he used to come on your show all the time, right?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, he used to come on your show.
All the time.
And then when he...
But they really blew it. I mean, the thing is, they've just completely... I'm going to forget Pelosi and all the known criminals. These so-called advocates of people continue to do nothing on direct relief or Medicare for all.
It's unconscionable. Dylan, I go on other...
make excuses.
I go on other shows, and they're still... Here we are in December. I go on other YouTube progressive shows, and they're still asking me questions like, well, what did you expect? Did you expect the Squad and AOC to commit career suicide? That's what they ask me. I'm like, first of all, Nancy Pelosi doesn't hire and fire congressional people. Their districts vote for them in or vote them out. How is it career suicide to be seen fighting for Medicare for all or fighting to help people get a cash payment? People still say that shit about the CARES Act. Does that surprise you that people still don't know what happened?
Yeah. I mean, I think the theme of this sort of whole sort of journalistic political infrastructure, like the name of the book, if you were to write a book about this year, it would be Dereliction of Duty. Mm-hmm. Whether it was Trump's dereliction of duty on the virus or whether it's the political Pelosi's dereliction of duty on the stimulus, or all down the line, or the media's dereliction of duty on accountability or any of it. We're dealing with the consequences of a massive, catastrophic dereliction of duty that has cost hundreds of thousands of lives literally trillions in economic compression and disruption and destruction, all largely because of a dereliction of duty.
Wow, that I think
The same horrible problem, which is this virus. If you're going to do lockdowns, they only work if everybody does them, if they're done with severity and they're done immediately. You get one chance. Like I know it's LA, they're talking about California going back to lockdown and all this. It's over, man. Like the virus hits, in those first few weeks, you can either shut it down and have it go away. Vietnamese get this. New Zealand gets this. The Thai government gets this. Taiwan got this. But the West, America, the least among them, but the whole West doesn't understand this. And they think that the lockdown is even a relevant part of the conversation months after the lockdown is it's over. The lockdown is just a way to create economic destruction and isolation and suicide. It's not going to do anything for your transmission rate. Your transmission rate now, because your penetration is so high, you've had months of spread of the virus now from the failed lockdown at the beginning. Anyway, the dereliction of duty is so many layers. It's incomprehensible.
why do you think people keep fucking putting up with these lockdowns? I don't understand. Why? First of all, why is it? Could someone explain to me why the sporting goods store on the corner of my block, which has about 5 people in it at any moment, at any given time, has to close, but Amazon.com, which has thousands of people working inside buildings, I can order a basketball from them. I can order a baseball glove from them and it's going to get delivered. And there's thousands of people working inside that building. I could go to Walmart and I could buy a baseball mitt and there's thousands of people working inside there. I could go to, what the fuck is that? How do people put up with, they're going to close your small business, but the most gigantic monopolies get to stay open? How do people accept that?
I think that people feel they have no choice but to accept it. That's why that's why you've got such a toxic and heated situation in this country, because you have an unknown level of abuse, and we don't know what the consequence of that is going to be. But you have a situation where the credibility or trust of the government's at an all-time low. The consequence of the policy in terms of its fatality and economic catastrophe is at an all-time high. There's a subset on the digital side that's making more money than they ever have ever, while the balance of the economy gets either degraded or destroyed, depending on where it is in the spectrum. And the obvious response, which is a viable healthcare infrastructure and direct cash relief to people, is something that both political parties refuse to do. It's something that you would write about in a history book for the catastrophic dereliction of duty that it is.
The WHO, the special envoy on COVID, was warning people against lockdowns. I saw the video of him saying that. I was like, well, if he's saying this, why is my governor saying the opposite? What could possibly be in it for the governor of California? Remember, California is the 5th largest economy in the world. What could be in it for him to lock down his economy without giving people cash payments? Could that possibly be good for his political future?
Absolutely not. I think that unfortunately, because the lockdown is an appropriate response in a specific situation at a specific time, which exists for a single time window, which is always at the beginning of any potential pandemic. So imagine there's one moment where having the special tool to open the doors to the car is the right time to have that tool, right? And the lockdown is that kind of an instrument. And so for that, in that moment, in that very beginning, it has extremely high value and is a great early response to prevent all of the legacy multi-month, multi-year, permanent historical shifting of the catastrophe if you don't catch it on the lockdown. But that lockdown has to be done early, hard, and it has to be done intelligently, meaning that it's got to have bridge financing for everybody that's locked down, business and individual.
And
Direct cash.
right.
And then you make that and that payment is tiddlywinks compared to the cost that you're going to incur if you fail in that lockdown.
And we failed in that lockdown.
The worst thing you could do is a rolling partial lockdown,
which is what we're doing.
Which is like constantly chopping the knees off of some. I can't even. I don't want to go over too gruesome a metaphor, but it is the worst thing you can do.
And that's the way the United States government has been handling this: rolling blackouts, partial blackouts. It's nuts.
Yeah, lockdown.
Yeah, or I'm sorry, lockdowns. That's what I mean. Yeah, it's nuts. It's nuts. And you know, I haven't.
But to answer your question, I think that it's like the lever that the politicians feel like they have, even if it's no longer the lever that really affects the virus, because now the virus is totally a function of high transmission rates within communities, which are much more known and observable, and about reducing activity in those high transmission environments. But even then, you have so much, like, the virus is a function of its net penetration, right? You've got the rate of transmission and its net penetration in the population. And we've allowed the net penetration rate to get so high that managing it through anything other than a vaccine has basically been rendered useless.
Yes. Well, they have their vaccines already, 90 and 95% effectiveness, and if you believe that, I don't know. I have fingers crossed for the vaccine. I really do. I have fingers crossed, but all the information we're getting right now is coming from the companies who are set to make money off it. So we have to wait and see what the real story is on these vaccines. But Joe Biden's going to fix everything, right? Right, Dylan?
I mean, if the first look at Joe Biden is a stimulus that's 50% less than the pre-election stimulus with no direct cash relief, whatever profanity you feel comfortable with should be uttered at this time.
Now, I know you're an economics guy. You're not necessarily a politics guy, but go ahead and put on your political pundit hat. How bad are the Democrats going to get wiped out in the midterms under Joe Biden's presidency that offers people nothing in the middle of a depression? Because that's what we're going into, a depression.
I think that it's going to, unfortunately, the pattern going back, decades now is every 2 years a rejection of the incumbent force, which is the sort of desperate pleading from this broken electoral system for something else, but it's a false solution because the rejection of the incumbents always brings in a replacement, a so-called opponent, whether it's Pelosi or the Republicans, that always makes it worse.
That's correct. It gets worse. Every 2 years it gets a little worse. Sometimes a lot worse, like right now. Hey, everybody, this is the part where I tell you where all our live shows are, but there aren't any. And then this is why I tell you to join our premium program and get extra content, but nobody's got a fucking job. So just enjoy the video.